Hello, internets. This is Adam Brinckerhoff in Colorado, just north of Denver at SpaceUnited headquarters, and I am here hosting the SpaceUnited podcast with our friend Henry Throop, who is out in South Africa. What part of South Africa are you in, Henry?
I'm in Pretoria, South Africa.
Awesome. So Henry's a friend of the program. He works for a variety of organizations, including Uwingu, which we'll talk about more later in the show. And he's here pulling double duty as our guest and co-host. So let me get my screen share up, and then we'll go ahead and jump right in. Let's see here. All right. Henry, can you see the slides?
I can see the slides.
Awesome. So that probably means that everyone out there can see the slides. So today we're talking about how to beam yourself to Mars, and we'll explain a little bit more about what that means. But basically we're looking at ways that you can get involved with the Martian landscape and just interacting with Mars. You might think that that's impossible since you're here on Earth and Mars is way out there in space, but there are a lot of really cool interactive ways to do that, and we'll talk about those. But first, I'll tell you a little bit more about Henry. He is a former program officer at NASA. He's currently an astronomical researcher at Uwingu, plus working for the Planetary Science Institute and teaching some classes at the university there. So he does a lot of different things, and we're excited to have him on the show to share his knowledge with us and with you out there all over the world. So a little bit more about this idea of beaming yourself to Mars. So unfortunately, transportation via teleportation hasn't been invented yet, but we have a lot of good alternatives of ways that you can check out Mars through different organizations and in different applications. So the first one I'll let you know about, I'm sure you've all heard about the Curiosity rover. That's formerly known as the Mars Science Laboratory. Excuse me, based out of JPL, a NASA base out in, or NASA center out in Southern California in Pasadena. So a while ago, they landed the rover on Mars, and since then have been directing it or controlling it as it moves about the Martian surface. And so it got a lot of news initially when the launch was a success, but they haven't talked a lot about it, at least in the press that I've seen, in terms of the discoveries that it's making. But it's taking a lot of pictures, and it's analyzing a lot of soil. So this is a great page to go to. It's just the mission page within NASA's website to get the latest videos and images coming back from the surface of Mars, as well as the written science and analysis on all the different things that it's finding. So as you can probably tell from the name, Mars Science Laboratory, the rover not only has the ability to take pictures and troll around the surface, but it also has a huge suite of different science and laboratory technology on board, so it can pick up a sample on the surface and do all sorts of different readings and analysis. So that's part of why it's such an important mission for Mars science. The other thing to keep in mind too is that it's about the size, if I'm not mistaken, of like a Mini Cooper. So it's a big guy, and that allows it to travel a lot of places that some of the smaller rovers were not able to go, in terms of the difficult terrain into craters and all sorts of other stuff. So check out that website. There are also other resources online all about MSL, or Mars Science Laboratory. So that's a good way just to see what the cutting edge of Mars science is, and to see what they're working on. So next up, I will let Dr. Throop tell us a little bit about crater naming, which is a program that Uwingu has been running for a while. But he can give us a little bit more information about what exactly it is, and then sort of some of the numbers and data on the program thus far.
Thanks, Adam. So the situation here is that we have there are millions of craters that are on Mars, and these have been detected by mapped out by these Mars spacecraft. We have a whole bunch of spacecraft which are up at Mars now or have been up there recently, including things like the Mars Global Surveyor, which was launched some time ago, other missions both orbiting it and on the surface. And so we have a real good picture of what the surface of Mars looks like now, and it's a heavily cratered terrain. It's not as heavily cratered as the Moon is because it was wet in its history, and a lot of those craters were washed away. But as you can see in the slide there's still a lot of craters there. In fact, just in our database of craters, we have about 500,000 craters, and most of these craters, the vast majority, are unnamed, and they exist in someone's list of craters in someone's database, but they have no names associated with them at all. Historically, the International Astronomical Union, the IAU, has been in charge of naming these craters. But if you look at the number of craters they've named in the last 50 years, it's been on the order of about 1,000 for Mars, and so which is fine if you're just starting off and you just have a very small number of craters. But we're now in the regime where we have millions of craters, and this very slow process that they have just takes a long time to name these craters. It's maybe a crater every month or two that the IAU has been naming, and it goes through a long committee process and so forth. And so what we've done is worked with one of the groups that's making the Mars catalog, and it's cataloging all of these craters from the surface of Mars. And we're allowing the public to actually participate in the naming process. You can click on a crater there, you can name it, and you can put a dedication on it. This is essentially a complementary naming process to what the IAU is. These are not IAU names, and the IAU names are not Uwingu names. We're incorporating all the IAU names into our database, but this is into the Uwingu map. This is a map that we hope that scientists will use, because there is not another map that has these names on it. Some groups, such as MarsOne, are using our map officially. And what we're doing with the money, so it costs about $25 to name some craters, $10 to name some craters, $5 to name some craters. It scales with the crater size, and so there's certainly some large ones out there if you want to spend thousands. But what we're doing with this is not just keeping this money. We're giving half of the funds to what we call the Uwingu Fund, which is a nonprofit which is funding space science research. So we're funding a lot of graduate students. We're funding a bunch of education and research programs, International Dark Sky Association, groups like SpaceUnited, groups like Astronomers Without Borders, things like that. And this money is going to good causes, and we hope that the public will continue to participate in this project we have.
Very cool. So as you can see, there's some immediate statistics. You can see exactly where you are on Mars with all this data about district number and province number. You can zoom in and out. You can see which ones are taken and which ones are still available, as well as the last one that was named. And then these numbers down here show the number of named craters, so it's already over 12,000, but there's still a whole lot still available. They have 500,000 or 583,000, excuse me, still listed as available. So there's a lot left to name, and a lot of money still available to raise for the Uwingu Fund that Henry was mentioning. You can also see exactly where on the planet your crater is located, as well as the diameter, and just like the Earth has a latitude and longitude, the planet of Mars is separated and located in different destinations based on that same system. So there you have it. Very cool. All right, so next up, Henry mentioned MarsOne, and you, again, may be familiar with them, but just as a quick reminder that they continue to do their work towards human settlement on Mars, and there's been talk of a reality show to help fund the astronauts' mission and to select members of the public, for the mission through that show. But they also have a lot of other funding and partners, and so as they continue to make progress towards their goal, check out their website. I'm sure they have a lot of content as well throughout the social media, and that's a good way to see, instead of a government-based program like NASA, you can see a private-based organization like MarsOne, and to see the progress that they're making, and see when we might hope to get to Mars with human beings and set up a settlement like the one you see on their website. So finally, and we'll get more into this in what's considered to be the interview portion of the show, but I'll let Henry give a quick introduction on the new project at Uwingu, which is called Beam Me to Mars, and is the inspiration for the title of today's podcast. And it looks like you can send a message to Mars, but Henry, give us the details on what that's all about.
Yeah, well, here's the deal, Adam. It takes us about 9 months to actually physically travel to Mars, going on the typical robotic spacecraft that NASA sends out. But it just takes a couple of minutes to send a radio signal there. And what we're doing is actually assembling messages from the Earth that we're going to send out to Mars. We've contracted with a group that does a lot of this operation of satellites and sending messages out into space using, it's called Universal Space Networks. And so they're very good at doing this kind of stuff, with actually beaming messages out to space. And we've contracted with them to actually do this. So what happens here is that people can participate by composing a message. You can compose a message, either a short message, a long message. You can include a picture. You can actually even include an audio file if you want to essentially leave a voicemail for Mars. And you submit this on our website, pay a couple of bucks for it. And then on November 28th, 2014, this is coming up to the 50th anniversary of the Mariner 4 mission, and that was the NASA's first mission to Mars. So Mariner 4 anniversary is what we're doing this in honor of. And on this date, we're going to compile all these messages and actually send them out to Mars. So there's not going to be anybody listening at Mars yet. We hope that in the future, of course, there will be people listening to Mars, or listening on Mars. But these messages are not just going to be lost. They're going to continue to go out in space as the signal expands and it goes on out at the speed of light, of course. And we're also going to take all these messages and deliver them in hand to Congress and to NASA headquarters and the United Nations. So we're pretty excited about this. It's actually really fun to look at the messages which have been sent out. You can see everybody's message once you put in your message there. Then you can choose to make it public, so everybody else is going to see it as well. And it's really inspiring to see some of these messages which people are really stoked to be sending out to Mars.
Yeah, that's a great program. I think it reminds me of movies like Contact, where it's not just about exploring space, but communicating with different parts of space, and like the idea of like what message do we send out, or in that case, for those of you that have seen the movie, like the message that they thought the aliens were sending back, that was a repeat of what we had sent. And so you never know who's out there that is listening and who might catch the signal, not necessarily on Mars, but like you said, as the message propagates, and it won't just stop at Mars. And for those of you that aren't familiar with satellites and how they operate, this is very similar to the way that scientists and engineers communicate with satellites all across our galaxy. And so it's a cool way to be a part of that process. For example, when the Mars rover or one of the other orbiters around Mars, like Henry was mentioning, they get information about the planet, whether it's in the form of imagery or scientific readings. That information is relayed via these satellite dishes And so you have big satellite dishes here on Earth to both send and receive the signals, and then small ones either attached to the rover, and sometimes those are relayed to the larger dishes on the satellites that are orbiting around them. And it's the same type of technology that's used around Earth for telecommunication satellites or imaging satellites. Obviously, there are no I guess cables or extension cords out in space, and so it's all kind of a wireless network if you want to think of it that way, or similar to like a AM or FM radio station that you might listen to, but just an expanded version of that. So that's a really cool application of that technology towards making it more accessible to the general public and something that they can get involved with. And another great way to support other research and nonprofit work, again, through the Uwingu Fund. All right, well, thanks for that information. We're going to take a quick break from our discussion to just give a quick shout out to our top sponsors. It's no coincidence that those include Uwingu, but we'll let them just ride on our discussion for today. But Uwingu has provided us a lot of support in the past, and we appreciate the ongoing partnership we have with them. Our other top sponsors include AGI. They make satellite and other technical software for you to use both at home and in the workplace. They're very popular both amongst educational institutions like universities, as well as in engineering companies all over the world. We recently got a donation from them of some extra modules of STK, their popular satellite software, which stands for Satellite Toolkit. And so we're very appreciative of the ability to use their top-notch software to analyze missions that we're working on from our humanitarian perspective. Next up is Digital Globe. You may have heard of our Image Griffin mission, which donates imagery from providers like Digital Globe, and we have donated Digital Globe imagery in the past. So they've helped us out with that program, as well as some other work that we've done. We're very appreciative to them, and that imagery can be used, and is being used, frankly, throughout the world for nonprofit initiatives that we've supported through that mission. So go to our Image Griffin mission page to find out more. We just donated an image to an organization that's working in Cambodia to help a village there. So we're excited to get some information out about that soon. It's not quite up on our website yet, so that continues to be successful, and it continues to have a big impact. And then lastly, we have the Space Foundation. They continuously invite us to their great events and support us through other programs that they run. We're actually in the process of trying to become certified through them, when they have a great certification process for both for-profit and non-profit space-related organizations. So we just appreciate all of our sponsors, and if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, you can make a financial donation to SpaceUnited, or you can do an in-kind donation, so software like AGI or merchandise or whatever it is that your company wants to donate. We very much appreciate it. And that also goes for corporate matching. We do have the ability to do corporate matching, so if you work for a company that has a corporate matching program, where for every dollar that you give, they either give a matched amount or a partial matched amount, we're happy to work with you to maximize your donation. So let us know who you work for, and we'll work directly with them to get that matching in place. All right, so we're back with Henry. Now he's switching hats from co-host to guest, and I'd love to get his take on kind of his personal opinions about the different Uwingu programs that we have mentioned. So first off, Henry, now that the crater naming has been going on for a while, what's the favorite aspect of yours that you've seen, maybe that you were hoping for and actually came to pass, or maybe that you didn't even expect and has surprised you?
Oh man, there's a lot of great things with the crater naming. I think people have really taken to it. We've got the 12,000 or so names there, And what's really exciting there is just the personal connection with space that this gives to people. They see their creator, they choose their creator, they can choose that to be around other people's creators, around other areas they enjoy on Mars. And man, it really also it gives people a reason to explore the surface of Mars, even if they don't name a single crater up there. If they use the Uwingu site and explore the surface of Mars, explore the craters, explore the highlands and the lowlands and what's called the chaos terrain and Valles Marineris and all these other features which we've marked on there for sure. We're using all of the geological features that the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, has put on their Mars maps. It is a great way to just explore Mars and see what makes Mars so different than our own planet. And so I love just browsing around the surface of Mars, seeing what's there. Of course, seeing the craters that people have named there, and they're inspiring citations. Some of them are funny, some of them are really touching, some of them are many of them are not in English. It's pretty neat, and to be able to do that and explore the geology of Mars as well is really great.
Very cool. All right, I'm just keeping an eye on our message boards to see if we have any questions come in. But in the meantime, how about the message beaming? That's a newer program, but I saw, for instance, that there are celebrities that have submitted messages, and that you kind of have a lot of creativity with that one outside of just a name. So what has really struck you about that program, and how do you think it differs from the creator naming?
Well, I think this is great because you can send you can send a picture there. You can kind of make your mark in a different way on Mars. A lot of there's a lot of kind of creativity that goes into that. You can also send an audio message. That's pretty neat. There's been a couple of those that have been posted. And what's cool is those are actually going to be sent out to Mars, so Mars can listen to them. I encourage people to just explore these other messages which people have sent out. See what inspires them. Just read through them, explore them, comment on them, like them, share them with others, and so forth. For the ones which you are most inspired by. Everyone's inspired by different things, and it's neat to see that.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a great social way to see not only names for the creators, but messages, and it's kind of a way to interact outside of our Earth with the Martian landscape, but then also still tie it back into what people are doing here on Earth and how that all mixes and matches. And when you give kind of an open question like that with some basic parameters, it's always interesting to see what people do with it and what direction they take it. So if it were up to you and you had infinite money and time, what do you think would be a next cool way for people to get involved in the Martian world, similar to the creator naming or message beaming?
Well, man, you're saying two different things there. If it was infinite money and infinite time, as far as exploring Mars, definitely go up there and let's see what's there. Let's see what the history of habitability on Mars is. It looks like Mars is maybe pretty dead right now, but it's worthwhile looking to see what the history of habitability has been on Mars, if it was habitable in the past or not, and see how that ties in with the possibility of life elsewhere in the solar system. I mean, there are other Mars gets a lot of attention just because it's the closest. But if you're really looking for life, look at Titan, look at Enceladus, look at Europa as well, because those are the places where we have liquids on the surface right now, and we know with the history of evolution of life, chemistry most often happens where you have liquids and warm liquids at the surface. So let's take what we've learned from Mars and apply it to looking for life on all these other surfaces as well.
Awesome. Well, that's a really cool perspective of kind of where we are now and where we're headed. I actually did some research back in graduate school at Georgia Tech on good, efficient ways in terms of fuel to get between the planets like Saturn and Jupiter, but specifically once you get there, how to kind of hop between the moons, because like you said, it's kind of like a what we think at least is that it's going to be a nature tour in terms of what can we find at each of the moons, and hopefully there's life to be found currently, not just evidence that it was there in the past. All right, so we're going to, with the last few minutes that we have, jump into our question section. We always like to get the feedback from our community on the questions that we asked our guests. So they're the same questions we asked Henry. What do you like about crater naming? Let us know if you've, named a crater on Uwingu's website and what you named it and why. We are always interested to hear sort of the background of those types of things. If you dedicated it to someone, or if it was a joke, or whatever it may be. And then also about the message beaming, is that something that you've done? Does it intrigue you? If you just heard about it, and what do you think you would send to Mars, or what are you going to send to Mars if you've filled out and paid for a message, again, through Uwingu? And then if we want to get your ideas, we're always interested in what the community has to say about what the space exploration world or industry should do next. And so if you have an idea for ways to get involved in Martian exploration, whether it's people going to Mars, like Henry mentioned, or like we talked about with MarsOne, or just another way from home here on Earth to use technology to get involved, like crater naming or message beaming, what might be another way that we can interact with it from here? We're always interested in your thoughts. So a couple ways to do that. If you're watching or listening right now, you can put some answers to those questions to our Hangout page. But we also understand that you may be watching or listening to this after the live broadcast. So if that's the case, go ahead and jump on Twitter and just tweet your answer along with the hashtag SpaceUnited, and we'll be happy to field those answers and comment, give our own comments, and have a conversation with you through Twitter. So lastly, we just want to open up with questions that you may have, similar to our previous answers that we wanted from our questions. Feel free to use the Hangout. You can post a comment on the Hangout. We also have this cool Q&A app that I need to open up, that you can ask a question directly there, and then you can see as we're answering it. And then finally, again, just to use Twitter throughout the week or month or whenever it is that you tune in. And we have a lot of different ways that you can tune in after the fact. We have YouTube video versions as well as audio podcasts. So if you're a podcaster, check out our feeds on iTunes and Stitcher. And we are happy to interact with you and find out what you think about all the stuff that we're up to and the work of our guests and everything in between. So, all right, with that, I'd just like to thank Dr. Throop again for being our guest. So thanks, Henry.
Thanks so much, Adam. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, and as a return guest, he gets special bonus points that don't actually convert to anything, but maybe they will someday. So for all of you out there listening, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting both the work of Uwingu as well as our work here at Space United. Keep exploring for good, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Adios.